Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Technology Leader panel discussion on how distributors use AI to drive sales effectiveness. My name is Ian Heller with Distribution Strategy Group. In a few minutes, I'll be introducing our illustrious panel. These are fantastic experts in AI in technology for distributors. So it's going to be a great discussion. But before we do that, let me tell you about our upcoming conference, Applied AI for Distributors. Tickets are selling fast for this event. It's June 24th through 26th in Chicago. We've got some fantastic general sessions, some exciting ones still to be announced, by the way, but we'll be joined by Trent Gillespie, who's the CEO of Stellus AI, and a former senior AI leader at Amazon, Don Sarno, who's the Senior Vice President of Digital Enterprise North America at Sonopar, the world's largest electrical distributor. Noel Russell, who Think360 just named the world's leading thinker on agentic AI. Agentic AI is the next big thing after large language models, so you're going to want to hear from her. She has a tremendous background at Microsoft, Amazon, IBM, and some other corporations, and a bunch of other fantastic content. We have a pre-show event that is free if you're one of the first 75 people who register. Spots are filling up, so that is going to be sold out soon. That pre-show event is on how distributors can apply AI across their enterprise to become more productive. You can scan the code there, or you can go to appliedaifordistributors.com to get more information and to register. So I hope you will do that. This show is going to sell out. We have some of the world's leading technology companies when it comes to applying AI to make distribution operations more effective, more productive, more efficient, et cetera. You don't want to miss it. And if you can't make it, you should send someone else from your company. Okay, with that, let me bring in our fantastic panel of experts. We'll be joined today by Kristen Tom, who's SVP of Customer Experience for White Cup, Varun Sridharan, who's the Director of Science Development at Infor, Zach Pretzel, who's an account executive at Endeavor, and Chris Fisher, who's the VP of E-commerce at ECI. Panelists, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm looking forward to this discussion, and I hope you are too.
Thanks, Ian.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's do some introductions. Take your time, tell us a little bit about what you do, about what your company does, and about what you think about today's topic. So, Kristen, on my screen, you're first, so why don't you start?
All right, happy to. Thanks so much for having me. I'm Kristen Tom. I'm the Senior Vice President of Customer Experience at White Cup. We offer CRM and BI specifically built for distribution. Super excited to be here today with this panel talking about AI driving sales effectiveness, as that's exactly where our roadmap has focused and will focus going forward here as well. So over the last year, we've seen our users adopting features like customer-specific AI cross-sell recommendations and insights into buying cycles for individual customers. We're really excited to continue building these AI features that pair with sales and marketing automation to increase sales and drive revenue. But we're also excited about this evolution of CRM away from an electronic Rolodex or just the big brother sort of management tool that customer-facing teams hate and won't adopt, to instead be an actual margin driver in the business and providing value to those end users as well, not just upper management.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kristen. And I should have said before I introduce Kristen that if you have questions, there's a Q&A button at the bottom, so you can help drive this discussion and get your specific questions answered by using the Q&A button. So, Chris, let's go to you next. You're over in Amsterdam, you said.
I certainly am, Ian. Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Fisher, as Ian says. I'm Vice President for e-commerce here at ECI Software. I've been with the company just about 6 years directly. I was actually a reseller of one of our products for another 13 years before that in the space as well. We're a global software solutions provider in the ERP, e-commerce, and product data management spaces, born out specifically of the distribution vertical going back a little over 25 years now. We celebrated our 25th anniversary last year. And we've kind of come full circle. The ECI in our name stands, in fact, for e-commerce industries. So this is kind of a further revolution of the corporate life cycle. So we touch a number of verticals, but we were born out of the distribution space originally. And here's where we are today with a focus as a go forward on e-commerce specifically across all of our verticals and as we move forward AI as it leads into these platforms, both e-commerce and ERP.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Chris. Mr. Zach Pretzel, Zach, give us a bit about your background and what you're doing at Endeavor.
Hey, and thanks for having us. So I'm Zach. I come from a background. I started my career in NASA. Then I spent a few years building AI for drones. And now I'm here building Endeavor, mostly driving deployments into some of our enterprise customers. And what we do here is, we build AI agents for a lot of document processing workflows. So you could imagine, orders that are taken in from, PDF, and kind of using AI agents to automate some of those processes. And what we're finding is when we get into these distributors, is there's so much untapped potential that AI agents can do, and that's really where we've seen growth, is just getting in these organizations and just finding all sorts of places where AI agents can take over some of the more boring tasks. So thanks for having us, Ian.
You bet. Hey, I've always had a question for someone who works at NASA. You know how people like to say, well, look, this isn't rocket science. When you work at NASA, do you say, well, look, this is rocket science?
This is rocket science. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it was some of the smartest people I've worked with.
I would imagine. Until you got to this panel. I mean, come on.
Yes.
All right. Varun Sridharan, so thank you so much for joining us today. Why don't you give us a little bit about your background and what you're doing it in for?
Yeah, thanks, Ian, for having me here. So I'm actually a computer science engineer by graduate. I go long back to maybe like say 20 years before when I finished my graduation. At that point in time, algorithm was not my favorite subject. Let me be very honest about it, because I didn't understand the real-time implications of it. But I have been in this space like for more than a decade now, building machine learning models for a variety of use cases, distribution, retail, and whatnot. Interestingly, when I used to have a conversation with my friends or with my peers, who it is, they used to make fun at me saying that you are actually not a business person, you're someone who should be in academia. But I'm glad like things are now turning around, and I'm so happy to be part of this panel. I used to work for Amazon, like say briefly for 4 years as well, like say building in e-commerce product and a few fintech products. So right now I'm a director of science at Infor, where what we do is build a portfolio of AI ML solutions that gets embedded into our ERP solutions. So there are around like say 90 plus ERP solutions that Infor has that is actually powering various use cases for distributors, retailers, manufacturers, and then you name it, right? And currently our focus has been like say more towards what you mentioned, like say an agentic based experience, which is what currently we are actually focusing on, right? So we try to stay ahead of the curve. The one thing that I really like about my job is it pushes our critical thinking a lot. All right. I mean, as early as like say this week, I was putting together my thoughts around how should the distributors react to the ongoing tariff situation that is happening, right? I mean, how can they equip themselves, and how can we provide a point of view on how they need to react to those situations? So this is what I love about what I do over here. I'm looking forward for this discussion.
Great. Thank you so much, Varun. Okay, so the first question I'm going to direct to Chris, and then Zach, I'm going to ask you your thoughts as well. When it comes to identifying high value prospects, Chris, how can AI assist sales reps in pinpointing and prioritizing prospects with the highest sales potential?
Yeah, and this is the holy grail, right? Understanding how to make better value out of the customers that we're in a position to win and keep as well. I'll take us back really to the strengths where we are from an AI perspective, and playing to those strengths from a value extraction point of view. One thing that AI, as it stands today, is exceptional at, one of the greatest strengths, is pattern analytics, trend analytics, and looking specifically at pools of data, looking for tells, looking for insights within that. And that's something that humans typically aren't very good at. We don't weigh up ratios, we don't weigh up risk, we don't see patterns necessarily that we're not looking for. So looking at broad data, particularly from an e-commerce perspective, when we're able to capture data at scale, data points that aren't typically captured in typical B2B interactions, the phone calls that don't happen, the orders that aren't placed, the prices that don't hit the mark, all of those data points, what the AI models that we're working on do a great job of is understanding specifically what variables in that sea of data are leading to particular outcomes, to particular best courses of action, as it were, and learning from that in a repetitive feedback cycle as to what has produced better. Ultimately, every distributor has a slightly different ICP. We have a different product mix. We have different customer mixes. The market is very slightly different. So being able to dynamically understand who our ICP is, where they are, and at what point in their customer lifecycle they are from a journey perspective is very, very difficult to do on scale, but it's exactly suited to where AI is particularly strong and ultimately generates measurable results even today.
Excellent. And Zach, I think you had some thoughts on this too, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely want to echo what Chris said there. But what we're also seeing lately is, they call it generative AI. And so it's able to both see kind of this historical data, kind of draw an analysis on it, but then also kind of advise on what would be a good way to kind of approach these prospects. So it's not only like taking that historical data, but it's kind of looking into the future and generating kind of thoughts on experiments that you can run to kind of like target different prospects that you'd like to go after.
Yeah, and I think embedded in that is relevance, right? I mean, the more relevant the email, the greater the tolerance for frequency, right?
Exactly.
Now, Kristen, one of the things AI can do is sort of automate follow-ups. I mean, we used to do the old triggers where, hey, customer who bought this, bought that. I'm sure that's still valuable. But how do you think about how AI-driven tools can automate follow-up processes and make sure you're doing timely check-ins with customers and prospects?
Sure. So there's kind of two levels to this that I see. And the first is just a straight automation based on, again, what are we seeing from this customer? Emails, again, phone calls, conversations, buying patterns, e-commerce data, as Chris mentioned, incredibly valuable there. What are they looking at on that e-commerce site? What are they abandoning in their cart? Those are critical pieces to be able to automate kind of that really quick next step with that customer and allow distributors to do a little bit more with less, right? That's the sort of repetitive but time consuming actions that can take up a lot of time. You've got a late order, for example, going out to one of your customers and, being able to get ahead of that a little bit and have some visibility. So that's one piece of it. The other piece that I like to think about when we talk about AI and its role in automating pieces is actually going to what Zach mentioned a minute ago of taking a little bit more of a meaty conversation, maybe that needs to happen, and giving suggestions of how to have that meaty conversation at the right time with the right person. And so it's enhancing the salesperson to customer relationship there with these AI suggestions. So there's kind of two levels. One, just the straight automation, get those things off your team's plate so they can focus on high value activities. And then the second is using AI for those high value activities to have deeper conversations and really kind of advance what you need to do, serve your customer better, and ultimately sell more. So
so it's not just efficiency; it's actually better effectiveness.
And I think
absolutely.
And I think if you go back to the technology's strengths that support it, I mean, you're talking, of course, speed, timeliness in outreach is obviously like right up there in terms of importance. Scalability, of course, is as well. But ultimately the move away from a programmatic, you kind of alluded to this in the programmatic. If this thing happens, then do this thing. This kind of following a recipe to a world where you're the chef and you have 1,000 recipes, or better yet, you understand how recipes work. And now my outreach is my segmentation, but my outreaches are truly personalized to the extent that we can be creative, truly. Because each and every one is, how do I address this specific scenario, as opposed to how do I address scenarios that have these one or two things in common, this one product miss, this one customer class, this one event that has happened. Take the entire ecosystem of the environment and sit and build my follow-up based off of all of that information.
It's a great point, Chris. And oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, Kristen, go right ahead.
I was just going to add on to Chris's point. I think that's what's so like exciting about AI in distribution specifically as well is, Chris, you're so right. And distribution in particular, as opposed to like B2C or retail or other industries, distribution, it's all about complexity, right? You have thousands of customers, different locations, thousands, if not hundreds of thousands or millions of SKUs that they may be buying or not buying. It's just huge sets of data that are there and available for you. And it's really the complexity in that interplay. So I love that comment, Chris. I think it's really apt for distribution specifically. Yeah.
It's the distinction between selling socks at Target, isn't it? Ultimately, we can all create rules, sales-based rules that are going to try and add on sell. We can always, it's easy enough to do. If a customer buys this, then they may want to buy that. But actually, in distribution, they're typically needs-based purchases. Like there's a reason behind them. So whilst I can probably upsell someone a cool pair of socks at Target when they're going in to buy whatever they've gone in to buy, we've all been at the receiving end of that experience. Ultimately, you have to be much more customer focused when you're driving upsells in distribution, because that has to align with the business's needs.
So Varun, I have a question that comes out of that conversation, because a lot of what I'm hearing in the dialogue is that AI is recognizing patterns, right? And it's much better at that than humans are. And it may see patterns that we would never see, or that traditional software tools would never see. And so how do you build all of that capability into something as broad as an ERP? You know, do you have some specific examples? I don't know whether it's, you know, on the front end when it comes to prospecting, or it's inventory forecasting, or, you know, warehouse automation. How do you apply those new tools into an ERP to get benefit out of them?
Yeah, so if you typically think of it like, say, sales is the last piece of the puzzle, right? There are a lot of upstream activities that happens that leads to an effective or an efficient sale, right? Like I think the panelists covered here very well. Like if you think of a distributor who oversee a very complex complex supply chain, it starts all the way from sourcing the product that should be in line with your demand for a specific channel, being mindful of your shortages, being mindful of your surplus that could lead to lost sales, or like say that could increase your holding cost, right? You have to be very inventory aware to make sure that your pricing strategy is kind of in line with it. You have to understand your product affinities and customer behavior patterns, like Chris was actually mentioned, to drive an effective upsell and cross-sell activities, right? So how we think of it is like the AI can actually help to drive that end-to-end life cycle, if you will. We actually start with the first and foremost, like, so what is the biggest bang for the buck that I can get by using the data, right? So if you look at it, like, say, I can give you one example based on my personal experience. So we started with this customer who partners with multiple suppliers to drive their spare part inventory. So their initial goal was to reduce the time to serve the customers. So we built something called as a product smart search. Think of it that way. It's a contextual search, right? It is not like, say, a fuzzy match that happens in a typical old way. Once they were able to see their time go down very drastically, once they saw the reduction in the time to serve their customers, they wanted to understand, like, say, hey, what is the next best alternate product that I can provide if my inventory is not having the product that the customer is looking for, right? Now, this is where, again, ML becomes very powerful, because you can use this product description to identify products that are actually similar that will actually cater to your customers, right? Now, what they actually notice is, like, say, hey, when I'm picking the next best alternate product, I don't know how to basically price that specific product, right? Because that product might not have the same product composition as that of the product that you're necessarily trying to sell. So the question becomes, can you use the price levers by using my product composition and tell me at what price point I need to sell this specific product, right? Then the question becomes, if I sell the product at this specific price, will the customer actually, will I be able to retain the customer, and will they be able to make repeat purchases? Again, this is where, like, scoring for the customer behavior patterns and trying to understand similar customer, how they have reacted or responded to in the past, becomes a crucial thing, right? And there are also other various macro and nano-economic factors, like a competitor price, like, so what is the price of the product, raw materials in the stock market, and so on and so forth, that drives the price of the product. So what I call it as, like, so you end up creating an AI ecosystem, if I had to put it in that way, right? And I personally feel like, say, this is a step towards digital twin, which is what, like, say, most of our customers really find value in, right? So, yeah.
Got it. Okay, so in a digital twin, you can run simulations without affecting your
Exactly.
actual business.
Exactly. You are able to
Right.
see that end-to-end picture,
Right.
and then you are able to say, hey, if I make a change here, what does it mean to somewhere else, right?
Right.
Think of it that way. Yep.
All right, so let me switch directions a little bit, Zach, and talk about how we interface with these systems and how the customers interface with our companies through AI. So, if you think about chatbots and virtual assistants, I mean, it feels like today people generally avoid chatbots because they feel like they're not as good as talking to a human. I kind of foresee a time when that flips because the AI chatbot will have access to much more information and or at least be able to absorb it and act on it faster than a human can. But what do you see as the role that AI-powered chatbots and virtual assistants play in areas like sales efficiency and customer support?
Sure, yeah, great question. Everybody's had a mediocre or bad experience getting a chatbot when they just want to
Right.
talk to a human.
Right.
And when ChatGPT launched, everybody started plugging in chatbots into their website and any kind of process that they could. And ultimately that probably wasn't the right move. So really the core of what we do and where we found success is using the technology under these chatbots to kind of build like either completely different products. So there's no chatbot in the loop, or trying to find a middle ground where it's kind of extending human capabilities by partially using chatbots where you can while still having a human in the loop, or using the technology behind chatbots to help kind of like generate automated emails to customers or to vendors to ask more of the like transactional questions that they might have, which allows the actual human to do the more important part, which is maintaining the customer relationship and really bring that human factor and letting these like the technology behind chatbots to do the more transactional work. And so I think what we're going to see moving forward is kind of these chatbots at two different companies exchanging data in kind of a less structured format, where a human isn't necessary. So, I might if I receive a sales order and it's incomplete information from the customer, say, there's a plumbing part and there's a flange on it, or there's no flange, and the customer doesn't specify that. Right now, we have a human going to the customer to asking, did you mean this part, or did you mean this part, or this part? And it's a pretty transactional interchange, and it's often done over email. We can just have, an AI kind of read that in and send an email out. So it's kind of a chatbot under the hood, but the customer isn't seeing that it's a chatbot. It's just, thinking it's basically a human sending this highly transactional email. And what we're seeing is just like faster turnaround times on quoting processes, more accurate analysis, so it doesn't get like through the order and then the customer's unhappy with what actually gets shipped. So it's really kind of using them in ways that we haven't seen before is where
Right.
we're finding most success.
Yeah, ask. You don't need a human to ask. Does it have a flange? You need the flange? Right.
Right.
I think that's a really good example of a use case, because I think what the poor implementations, particularly of chatbots, all have in common, certainly the ones that I've seen, both from a business point of view and from a consumer point of view, is intent. I mean, the majority of poor chatbot implementations were done to save money. That's fundamentally what the purpose was. Like,
That's right.
take cost out of the business and not provide an additional value to the customer. That quick email off a sales order to clarify the flange question, right? That's an additional service that nobody else is doing. It's quick fulfillment of the order. It's quick confirmation of the order. It's lower failed order rates. That's a value add to the customer right there. And those are the sorts of things that are going to make a difference when the customer sees or perceives the value in it. We use, so internally within our support team, we've built a chatbot, but that chatbot is for the internal use of the support team. It's essentially a conduit to every piece of data we have about every one of our products and every one of our previous cases. So a support agent can personify the combined wisdom of 400 support people and 20 years of experience in all of our products with a question, with a natural language question, and the customer doesn't need to be using a chatbot, isn't using a chatbot, but a person can find an edge case from 7 years ago with these things, in, again, going back to pattern recognition, to add value to the customer without the customer seeing it as a change to the way they have to do business, and certainly not as an exercise in reducing headcount or trying to cut costs, which most failed implementations tend to look like, at least.
I think
Yeah,
part of that
one more.
too for, oh, sorry, go ahead, Varun.
What I was trying to say, since on this chatbot topic, so in the previous world, if you look into it, it's more or less like an if-else statement. If you think of it, I think Chris mentioned that. I think it lacks that context. That context was never there. But right now, our customers are actually finding value. The questions that they typically ask is, given my demand, tell me whether my inventory levels can actually fulfill this demand in a timely manner, right? It is able to bring in that context, and then it says that, like, say, hey, given the fact that you have a lead time of X days, and given this is what your inventory level is, it is better for you to order this many number of items by this many number of days, right? And then you take that experience to the next level, where the chatbot asks, do you want me to go ahead and reorder it for you? And then so you say yes, then there comes your agentic experience, right? Like, say, where they are able to interact with each other and make effective decisions for you. As a matter of fact, now our customers are trying to move away from this age-old legacy way of scoring through charts and data, finding a needle in the haystack and asking those questions. Boom, you get your answer, right? That's what they prefer.
Yeah, the distinction is that you've always been able to get your solutions, as everyone's solutions have had that data. We've always been able to say, to fulfill this order pipeline, I need this procurement strategy. The question is, do you have time to do that for every product category, every day of the week? No. Yep. And that's again, that's the gap that the agentic AI provides.
So Kristen, if you have, you can feel free to add to that, but this did provoke a question for me, I guess, which is, how does all this improve the customer experience? You know, so I mean, this is going to transform the way that distributors interact with customers and change the relationships, and maybe give sales reps more time to focus on more important things, et cetera. But if you take this, you know, chatbots taking over stuff like, do you need a flange with that, right? Or the internal team being able to provide better support because it has access to 7 years of history of customer support, and they can type a question and get an answer. I mean, how is this over time going to give technologically forward distributors? I mean, you have to actually implement this stuff, right? How is it going to give distributors like that an advantage in delivering a better customer experience?
Yeah, it plays in perfectly to what I was going to add on to Chris's comment, which is I think the difference there between those well-implemented chatbots and the ones that are not so successful is that the well-implemented ones are really focused on the customer first, rather than, like you said, the cost cutting, right? So the customer experience. And I think back for, you know, those of us who have played around with the different iterations of ChatGPT over the last couple of years, things like that. Some of those early iterations to what we have today, you'll notice today when you're putting in prompts, it helps you kind of craft a better prompt as you go, because that's not something that we knew how to do before a couple of years ago when we all started using ChatGPT and things like that, Gemini and these other tools. And so I think part of that is these chatbots helping the user through the process, and again, focusing that user on the actual customer at the end of the day, rather than cost cutting as kind of the main piece of that. So where I see this and where I see this happening in small bits already, and to your point, Ian, I think it's just going to accelerate and kind of grow over the next few years here. Where I see it impacting that customer relationship, it's really about that anticipatory relationship that you can have with your customer. So understanding how they buy and what they're going to need and how to improve their experience with your team, right? It's that looking forward a little bit on their behalf. That is, of course, always what builds a loyal customer, right? It's not just that one-time transaction. It's building that, oh, this made my life actually easier as a customer. Of course, I'm going to go reorder from them when I need to reorder next month. It's really building building that. The other piece of it that I've seen already, and again, I think this will only accelerate over the next couple of years, is bridging that gap that I see a lot of distributors struggling with right now with bringing on new hires into the business as well. So that passage of knowledge, there's so many folks in distribution that just have decades and decades of experience, and they know their customers, they know their products. And when those folks retire and we're bringing on new folks, that is a lot of knowledge to try to impart on somebody in a short amount of time very frequently. And so I've seen these tools helping bridge that gap as well. And again, I think that's only going to accelerate as we continue down this path too.
And I think we've actually seen, and this is partly e-commerce's fault in some sense, as well as the loss of that domain expertise within businesses, we're seeing more educated buyers on the other side of the equation. The product information out there already on the internet creates this much more educated buyer before the engagement begins. So tools like AI, tools like internal chatbots and things like that certainly help level set and try and sort of support some of that expertise within the business.
Yeah, when I started in distribution in the 80s, your local distributor is where you went when you couldn't find something. There are very few of those cases anymore. Most people can find whatever they want. They have multiple sources for it. By the time they call the distributor, they have a specific need. They're either placing an order or they have questions, but they're not saying, hey, I can't find this part. Not very often. Now, Zach, I want to turn to you. I'm going to ask you two questions. So the second one, I'm going to say it first because then I'm going to come back to the first one. I'm going to say the second one first because I want to give everyone on the panel a chance to think about this because this is going to be one of the only round robin questions. So the second question is going to be, what are some real world examples where AI has helped distributors dramatically improve their sales performance? So you guys can think about examples, Varun, Chris, and Kristen. But Zach, I want to start with you on a different topic, which is drawing from your experience in AI-driven tools. What are some of the most significant challenges distributors face when implementing AI, and how can they overcome these to enhance sales effectiveness or whatever effectiveness? Because the solutions don't work unless you implement them properly. There are a lot of obstacles. What do you see as those obstacles, and how do they overcome them?
Yeah, great question. And, kind of touching on what we talked about, getting ready for this call is really kind of the fear of labor replacement. And, the people who were kind of like working with to learn their processes and try to see where AI agents can fit in. It's a mix of like excitement and also fear that, this is going to replace our jobs. So I think part of it is the buy-in from them and kind of getting them excited that this will make their job easier and that there's other places where they can add value. But it's also gonna kind of light a fire under their butt to kind of figure out what that next thing is for them. So that's one of the big ones. And then the second is, people see AI, they see it's very powerful and they just want it to like do everything. And sometimes we have to tame expectations a little bit of saying, let's start small. Let's start in this area of your business. Let's find lots of success here so that there's no friction. You're clearly seeing value, and then expand the pie from there. And, some people get in and they say, oh, I have a feeling AI can do this and this and this. And it can, but we need to kind of take it in chunks and make sure it's successful in each one of those. So I think between those two of kind of what is the right small slice of pie to start with, and getting them bought in on that's the real meat of the value where we should start. And then I wanted to follow up on what Kristen said earlier briefly. In addition to kind of like, she was talking about the customer experience and managing that. One thing that we found extremely kind of one metrics that we're trying to optimize for is getting a quote back to the customer as quickly as possible. And we're seeing just AI being able to move so much faster into gathering all the information and making the turnaround time, instead of getting a quote out to them in a day or 2 days, we're getting it out in under 4 hours now. And that's really like kind of adding to the customer experience of they don't want to go anywhere else, because oftentimes they're just going where they're getting the first quotation back.
Yeah, that standard is just fundamentally changing.
Yeah,
right? By an order of
absolutely.
magnitude or more.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, good. So let's get to the second question that I planted the seed on, which is, we want to give the audience some successful examples of how AI has helped distributors dramatically improve their sales performance. And if you don't have any examples, that's fine. We can move on to the next question. But, for those of you who do have examples, Krista, maybe we'll start with you, and then we'll end with Varun. But what are some real world examples where AI has helped distributors improve sales performance?
Sure. One of the most straightforward ones that we're seeing is AI suggested cross-sell opportunities or upsell opportunities into customers. So understanding what a customer is buying from you today, looking out to see what aren't they buying that based on what they are buying, they're likely to buy and find value from. We've seen as customers have adopted this in our system, anywhere from 5 to 10-ish % margin increase with those customers where the AI suggestions are being applied, which has been a huge benefit there. And I actually just was reading Jonathan's research on the same thing. I think he had like a 5 to 8% kind of boon with these types of tools, which is wonderful as well. So very easy to implement. The key for us there is having believable suggestions that the sales reps buy into right off the bat. And so finding the AI model, we ended up building our own and tuning it because the generic stuff that we tried for these cross-sell and upsell opportunities weren't meeting the mark. They weren't looking at the data the right way is what we found. And so having those suggestions where right when they see them, the sales rep is like, oh yeah, I should be offering this to this customer. That is increasing the effectiveness of these tools. So it's that first impression of what those suggestions are is really key to the buy-in on a sales team side to have that effectiveness.
Fantastic. Okay, good. That's a good example. Chris, you want to go next?
I will. Yeah, thanks. Ian. Actually, this is a flavor, really, corollary to Kristen's point, that the adage that better fit customers buy more from you, right? I mean, the closer you are to your ICP, the more effective, the broader your product catalog has applicability. So that goes from going from the customer to the, if they're buying this, then what else should they be buying, and analyzing gaps there. But take that the other way around and look at what we're stocking, look at what we're ranging, look at how we're merchandising in the catalog to begin with. So before the upsell opportunity, and understanding how to right size that to what our customer profile is. I think, again, humans not nearly as good at identifying patterns as we think we are. So connecting deep analytics into our customer data and the market data that we have available to us, understand where our opportunity is, and go after those customers that we're equipped to serve better. And from there, you get the upsell, you get more cross-sell, you get more retention, you get lower churn, you get lower customer service queries and cost, and all of the expense down the road with that. So really looking at that broad data lake almost of scale of information, understand like where are we going to win before we even pick up the phone, before we even waste time trying to win business that we really don't have the right to win.
Yeah, just to add on to that upsell and the cross-sell point that Kristen and Chris you mentioned. The other thing that I have seen is customers, we are actually advising the customers on what their strategic products are, right? And what I mean by strategic products is customer purchasing X is going to purchase Y and Z, right? So make sure that you are able to drive the demand of X, even though the price point and the revenue, it might not help you to end up making the revenue and the margin, because Y and Z are the one who's going to eventually end up kind of going to offset for the erosion in the margin or the revenue that probably like the product X is kind of going to do, right? So even under dire circumstances, make sure that you're able to drive demand for it, right? That is one thing that they're looking for. The other one is a time dimension. A customer basically purchasing, say, for example, an air cooler in the summer is very likely going to end up purchasing a heater during the winter, right? So And this is a signal that you can take from the past purchase behavior data, but not necessarily from your past orders data per se, right? So I think trying to identify those patterns, like Chris mentioned, and equipping yourself is going to be more important.
Great. And Zach, did you want to add anything besides the quote turnaround, which is a big deal? But there's anything else that about examples where AI has helped distributors improve their sales performance that you wanted to mention?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the main part of it is getting that time. The faster we can get that time, what's nice, what Amazon does when they're shipping is there's infinite lower shipping time that they can get their customers. And so they really like that problem because we're going from shipping in 2 weeks and now we're to like 1 or 2 day shipping. And we're only going to see faster and faster shipping times where it's going to be within minutes, we're going to get something on our doorstep. And so it's the same problem with kind of turnaround quotation time. We still, we're at 4 hours right now getting to our customers. We brought them down from 2 days, and there's still just infinite time where we can just get that lower and lower and lower. Soon we're going to be at 1 hour, and then 30 minutes, and then soon it's going to be instant. And that's what's kind of going to keep customers coming back to some of our distributors that we work with, is just instant quote times where their competitors are still at 1, 2, 3 days.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I mean, look, and that's addicting, right? So like I used to be, I when I interact with an online seller now and they don't like ship same day or get it to me in 48 hours, I feel like, wow, you really are stuck in the past, right?
Totally. And then they come to expect it because now they're waiting to the last minute. They know that they can wait to the last minute, so they do. And then it's addicting.
I think part of the ability to accomplish that as well is more indirect. This is a more indirect driver into that sales efficiency, but that some of the processing that needs to happen post order placement, perhaps between placement and confirmation, and certainly before shipping, is laborious. Some of it is time consuming. In an area where AI, we're finding we're building this tool now. There are tools out there as well that do this kind of stuff. Is fraud detection. Again, somewhere that plays into that pattern recognition, that trend analysis strength of AI as it is today. Taking that process of identifying fraud, as well as the cost, obviously, of our fraud, stripping that out of the order flow process and being able to get confidently into that picking stage and being able to ship out orders without having the overhead of time or cost in rationalizing that from a human point of view is again a big game changer. Because if your customers are doing like what Zach says, if they're coming up to the 3:58 cutoff for a 4 p.m. last order, and expecting it still to be out that day, you can't compromise on those sorts of things. It's extremely expensive to turn a blind eye to the risk of fraud and even errors in orders. Being able to pick those up and being able to pick them up confidently certainly helps with that constricted timescale for order turnaround.
The other lens of that, just building off of what Zach mentioned, was some of the verticals that we work with in distribution. This like just-in-time order is so important. So building materials comes to mind for me. Our building material distributors who are working with contractors, people on site, they oftentimes don't have a great place to pre-order and store stuff, right? And secure it overnight, and it becomes a logistical nightmare. And so distributors have come up with ways to help them out, renting warehouse space, doing van deliveries each morning for them. They've come up with these creative ways to do this. And to Zach's point, I think what we'll see is an extension of that kind of across other verticals that becomes less and less of a burden on the distributor to figure out how to do that so they can increase their margins and offer those same services.
Yeah. And Varun, you must deal with a lot. And I'm sort of throwing this out you out of the blue, but Chris brought up the idea of fraud detection. And I mean, that's got to be a big part of what ERPs worry about and try to provide for in their order processing, right? I mean, that's not just a online threat. I mean, people call in on fraudulent orders on a regular basis too. How do you think about that how does AI affect that? Is that an area you work in?
So yeah, I mean, I have some background on this. So interestingly, when I was at least in Amazon, what we used to do is we used to calculate something called as a downstream impact. What it basically means is what is the long-term impact of entertaining and fraudulent sale? Put it that way, right? What it means to your inventory, what it means to your sentiment from a reputation perspective, right? And what is the opportunity cost of entertaining that, right? Because you're probably having a genuine customers in line and you're actually drawing your inventory for someone else or spending your time with someone else that you should not be basically be spending, right? So rather than looking at it like say more transactionally, we what we try to do is try to look at the long-term impact, like say more from an ecosystem standpoint. What does it mean to you, right? And there are various tools that are also available there that can actually help you to provide a more guided experience, right? And this is where I think AI also becomes very important because it can score through data. And if you have like say past data where you are able to classify to say, hey, which one is a genuine order and which one is not a genuine order, AI would be able to do a better job in classifying them and provide you a much more guided experience.
Okay, good. So there are AI tools that can help, but I like the idea of an ecosystem impact rather than just calculating the loss of the individual
Yep.
transaction. So we're getting down to the last part of our conversation here. So I want to sort of open the floor to you guys to talk about anything that we haven't discussed, but I will plant a seed this way, which is where do you think this is all going? Right. So we've got in fact, one of the things we haven't really talked about is how do you maintain consistent omni-channel experiences for customers, because that's increasingly important. They've learned to expect it in the consumer world. I can change my seat on my flight as I'm walking to the gate, for example, on an airline. Distributors typically aren't quite that consistent, or not nearly that consistent in many cases. So those expectations are transferring from the consumer world or have transferred to the business world. So, I mean, where is this going? How is AI going to help us provide a better interaction, better customer experience for customers? We've got, agentic AI, we've got large language models, we've got all these different tools. The world is changing rapidly. Where is it all going? What do you think it's going to look like a few years from now for distributors who do it well? Anybody want to start with that?
Yeah, I'll take a run at that. And I think it's going everywhere. I mean, that's ultimately where it's going. If you look at the evolution of AI technology today in either of those two fields or others, the rate of change has been remarkable. And with any continuation of that, the state of the art in 2 years' time is going to be unrecognizable, even from today. I think the only barrier to adoption and ultimately what will lead to that omni-channel experience and service proposition is going to be trust. One of the items that I missed off my list of things that AI does really well, it does pattern recognition, it does content creation. We've touched on LLMs a little bit, but I think we're more focused on agentic use cases or models certainly today. Great at repetitive tasks as well. But one thing that AI models today are great at is making mistakes. And currently that small number, and it's certainly diminishing, but that non-zero number of hallucinations, of errors, of context mismatch. I was at an event last week. We were talking about AI there, and the facilitator had done an AI co-pilot search on each of the speakers and presented the results. And in almost every case, the AI had taken multiple personalities and blended their bios together because it get the context. It doesn't appreciate the distinction. That erodes trust, and that leads to a lack of an uptake. You're an example of walking to the gate and changing your seat for a flight. You do that because you know it's going to yield the result that you expect. You have a shortcut through the app to do that. You wouldn't necessarily phone to do it, but you know you're going to get the result. You trust the result. So once we're able to focus, and I think every speaker here has kind of touched on this, we focus on the things that we can win on. Zach mentioned, picking specific areas. Like everybody wants some AI, the same as 10 years ago, everybody wanted some cloud. But pick a great use case, do an exceptional job, demonstrate value to your customer, to your people internally, and then people gravitate to it. Give people the tools, and they will gravitate towards those. We don't need to sell them. None of our customers need to sell these tools to their customers. Provide them And if they're customer focused and if they add value, they'll work and people will use them.
But I think prioritizing them is right, because if you do introduce something that does produce a lot of errors, like the Copilot example, then people will reject the whole idea sometimes, even though the use case was just the one flawed one. All right, who wants to go next? What's the future look like as these tools evolve?
Yeah,
I can
Oh, go ahead, Varun.
go. Okay. Do you want to go, Zach? I'm okay either way. Okay, I'll go ahead. That's fine. You gave me this. So I'll try to double down on what Chris mentioned, right? Because he brought a very interesting point, and I have a real-time example, especially from a use case perspective, right? AI can have unintended consequences if you're using it in the incorrect way, right? So one example that flashes my mind is there was this one a use case which came my way where people are saying, hey, can AI help to identify the discrepancy between what a product should be priced and what my salesperson actually sold it for? And then can it actually help me to tell what is the revenue or the margin leakage that I will be incurring if this has to continue to happen, right? Now, I actually felt that that's not the right way to think about it. Take a step back. The question is, the damage is already done at that point in time, right? So the question really becomes, how can I proactively provide a guided experience to the salesperson so that he is able to provide an revenue and a margin recommendation that is in line with my company's strategic direction, right? So treat it as an upper funnel activity rather than a lower funnel activity, right? So I think it is very important for us to question the status quo, especially with the current business processes that is there in place with AI coming into the picture, right? That is number one. And the other thing is, as I think Zach kind of briefly touched this, is AI is never going to replace sales roles, right? That is a symbiotic relationship that is actually going to exist between the salesperson and the AI model, right? Treat it as your virtual assistant, where it actually helps you to automate some of your context-aware routine decisions, if I will, and think of it as something that it will reach out to you with some guided prescription when an one-way door decision, right, had to be taken, if you think of it that way, right? So I think that's how you would want to treat AI. Now, given that fact, please don't completely rely on your AI model, right? Have a good oversight, create a proper feedback loop, and think of AI as a journey, right? It is not a one-time investment. It's a journey that you need to undertake. Start seeing some small incremental values, do some thoughtful integration, do some continuous fine-tuning and model retraining, and eventually make sure that that's a deep understanding of both technology as well as the human dynamics.
Excellent. So Zach, we're going to go next with you and then wrap up with Kristen. Where's this all going? What's it going to look like in the future as we use AI to improve sales effectiveness?
Yeah, so Chris mentioned that right now AI is riddled with errors. That's often the case. Ultimately, we're kind of seeing that get better and better every day. And I'm a huge believer that this technology is going to become incredible. And so what we're seeing, and I definitely think we're going to see more in the future, is a fundamental reallocation of labor. Where there's two main parts of a business. There's building and then there's selling. And right now we have all these processes in between that are taken, humans are kind of in the loop. There's accounts payable, there's just like all this kind of document processing. And I think what we're going to see is the humans are going to be on the building side and the selling side, and these AI agents are going to chip away over the years everything in between. And so I think it's really, companies need to think how they should do that, what they should implement now, and where they should reallocate labor to kind of like these edges of the organization, while the agents kind of take over this middle ground. Not to incite fear in people's eyes, but it's coming, and the organizations that adopt this quickest will be the ones who succeed. Just like the Industrial Revolution, just like the Internet Revolution, the same thing is happening today with AI agents.
Very good. Oops, sorry. Mike's wrong. Kristen, so we'll wrap up with you. So where's this all going? What's it going to look like in the next 5 or 10 years?
Sure. I think even nearer term than 5 or 10 years, just like we've talked about chatbots, I think note takers and tools that help us cut down on stuff that we hate doing, like data entry, are really the next. We're already seeing this in many, meeting summaries, things like that, that are happening across different tools. I think that paired with pushing of suggested actions and suggested areas to focus is really key. Getting folks out of doing so much in program and focusing again on those kind of high value activities. AI driving that process, I think, is the very near term that we're again already seeing and is just going to be accelerating here. To a little bit wider view here, I think we're going to see, all of us being technology providers here, a push for more and more cross-platform integrations. We're seeing the benefit of having these different data sets to be able to run these models against and use additional information and things like that. So that sort of thoughtful platforming of data so that it is available for these, big picture ideas that we're talking about here and some of where we're headed. And then I would say to Chris's point, I think as technology providers, we are going to have a little bit more of a burden on us going forward of providing some of the assumptions and context of what our models are doing. What's the assumption behind this that's giving this output? I think as technology providers, that's going to land on us in the next few years to help people use these tools most wisely. And then to Zach's point, definitely agree there. I think in the very near term, the impact on labor is going to be just, if you're not already doing this, you probably will be very, very shortly, focusing on AI literacy as a skill that you are hiring for into your business at pretty much any level that you're hiring. This isn't one person in your business. It is, kind of across your business. Who are the folks that are interested? They're willing to do a little bit of experimentation. They are putting some critical thought into some validation of these AI models and can use these, find what works and help that scale in your business. I think those are going to be critical skills going forward here.
Fantastic. Good. Hey, panelists, hang on for just a second, if you would, please. I just want to talk about a couple of upcoming events that we've got. On March 19th, we've got this is really our webinar on measuring what matters, customer satisfaction and market demand analytics. We've introduced 2 new tools that don't compete with anything you guys do. In fact, they're very complementary. But it's about measuring NPS for distributors or measuring end market demand. So that's Jonathan Bine, who created these products. I'll be on there as the eye candy. He's better at his job than I am at mine. So that'll be an interesting discussion. So please join us for that. And then we have Don Sarno, who's actually speaking at our upcoming conference, but he's coming on the Wholesale Change podcast to talk about how Sonepar is driving real value from AI and give us a bit of a preview for what he'll be talking about at the Applied AI conference. That's brought to you by Epicor and Net at Work. Kristen, Chris, Zach, Varun, thank you so much, my friends. It was a fascinating discussion. I learned a lot. I'm sure the audience did too. I hope you'll come back and join us again in the future.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Ian.
Absolutely.
All right, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot. And until then, we'll see you on the next program from Distribution Strategy Group. Goodbye, everybody.